NFL Week 1. We now know the matchups for Thursday Night Football, the kickoff game, Chiefs-Ravens. Sunday Night Football, Matthew Stafford versus the Lions. Monday Night Football, the Jets and Aaron Rodgers versus the San Francisco 49ers. There's a lot more marquee matchups, Packers-Eagles on the schedule. Week 1 is always that hype week. What will each team actually look like? All this offseason noise, all this analysis, but what will they bring to the field? In this video, it will be a very early look at week 1. My breakdown for each game, my pick for each game, straight up and versus the spread. I'll be giving my advice on whether I really would bet a game right now, maybe wait a little bit closer to the regular season, how I feel about each game, which games I feel strongest about, which games I don't really know which team is going to win or don't really have a good feeling either way. I'm going to break down each matchup as I would right before week 1 actually kicks off. We're just going to do it in May. Then we're going to see how these thoughts translate over the course of the summer into NFL Week 1, how these lines move, and how the narratives of all of these teams change, because we know it always does. If that sounds good, don't forget to Gronk spike the like button, guys. Really helps my channel and other people find this channel. And if you're enjoying this content, subscribe, man. This is the place to be for NFL offseason content. You will not get a more honest opinion out there on YouTube, and one that covers all 32 teams, unlike any other channel. And I'm not just patting myself on the back. If you know the BLV, you know that's how it goes. And right here, we're going to discuss all 32 teams and whether your favorite team will win or lose in week 1. Let's go, man. Let's begin with the kickoff game. The Kansas City Chiefs at home, raising the banner, their 3rd championship with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid versus the Baltimore Ravens. Chiefs are favored by 2.5 at home at Arrowhead. Last year, they lost. And I think that's going to be a narrative going into this game. The fact that the Chiefs did lose the opener last year. Because typically, I would say, just from experience watching football, especially being a Patriots fan and having seen my team play in this game a lot, usually the Super Bowl champs are super hyped. The energy is unmatched. The banner being raised. It's like a celebration of the Super Bowl champ. And typically, the champs, no matter what they will become for the rest of the year, look great in the opener. That's usually how it goes. Even the teams that decline still look really good in that first game, at least from my experience. But the Chiefs did lose last year. But I think people will get lost in that and really not the fact that Chris Jones and Travis Kelce didn't play. And the Lions were a good team, as we know. And without 2 of your 3 best players, it's kind of hard to win a big game. Now, will they win this big game? I think how I should be breaking this down is by talking about each team and where they're at right now. Because if this was the Ravens team from the AFC Championship playing this Chiefs team in week 1 of the regular season, I think I might pick the Ravens. But this is not the same Ravens team. A lot of people are looking at the Ravens and saying they're no doubt the AFC North champs. They're no doubt an AFC playoff team. I still probably think they are that for sure with Lamar Jackson, Harbaugh, the solid roster they do have and foundation they do have. But this is not the same team. First of all, they've lost arguably the best defensive coordinator in the entire sport. He's now the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. So that's first and foremost. They've lost some pretty big pieces on that defense, including their interception leader, Geno Stone, at safety. Pat Queen at linebacker. The area of strength for Baltimore in this defense, the middle of the field. Now, there is hope that younger players will step up at the edge position, at linebacker, at corner, but we don't know what those players will be. Their defense probably will be very good, but not quite as good as it was due to the play caller loss, a couple of key fixtures last season, and maybe a lack of pass rush, especially without that scheme really aiding it to success, okay? The offense, a lot of questions on the offensive line, a lot of new pieces to the offensive line. The only real carryover they have is left tackle and center. Otherwise, left guard, and right tackle will all be new in week 1. Now, Mark Andrews will be back, and they did add Derrick Henry to help their backfield. Zay Flowers could be a better player in year 2, and Lamar is Lamar. But they do have new pieces on the defense, on the offensive line, and it's going to be intriguing to see how that second year of growth within this offensive scheme takes place. For the Chiefs, they pretty much have the same team. I think what you have to worry about with the Chiefs is on defense, the loss of L'Jarius Sneed and how that may impact their secondary and the way that they play the Ravens. Because last year in the AFC Championship, they pretty much just relied on their secondary to play man coverage, and they stacked the box to stop the run, therefore forcing the Ravens to be so intimidated that they didn't even run the ball. And then, on the other side, left tackle is a serious question mark, especially with the recent off-the-field news. Rashee Rice probably won't be in this game. How good will Worthy be right out of Texas? Marquise Brown, he'll be looking for chemistry with Patrick Mahomes early. And the offensive line is largely the same. Kelsey will be there, but again, another year older, another offseason, another, traveling around with Taylor Swift. How's that going to impact his football game? I don't know. Just a weird question to ask. But when I look at it, I do lean Chiefs to win. I do lean Chiefs to cover because of the experience of this game, because of the energy in Arrowhead, the Arrowhead advantage, especially with the lit atmosphere that is the kickoff game with all their fans there. Going to be loud. It's going to be rowdy. And it's going to be a lot for the Ravens to overcome with a new offensive line, having to deal with the noise of Arrowhead and having to deal with a very good defense. And then also the new defensive coach, the new defensive play caller, dealing with new defensive pieces as well, having to go toe-to-toe with Andy Reid with some rest and like a long period to prepare for this game, to look at the championship game and see what they did well and see what they could really do better. Patrick Mahomes in this game against a rookie play-calling defensive coordinator, along with some pieces that might not have the same rapport. So this is a really tough game for the Ravens. I think for them to win, they have to have huge games from Derrick Henry, Mark Andrews, and maybe even Zay Flowers once again. Defensively, they have to keep the Chiefs probably to under 21, 24 points. I think the winner gets to 24, and I think probably the Chiefs win by like 4 points here, something like that. I would say that they cover the 2.5 if I was a betting man, which I am. And I will say right now, I would take the Chiefs under a field goal. The Friday game is the game in Brazil. It's the Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Bay Packers. The Eagles are -1.5. This is tricky, and right now I would advise to probably not bet this game. There's just a lot that we don't know about this game. First of all, a lot of new pieces for Philadelphia. New offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. How will their offense look? Saquon Barkley now involved. A lot of new pieces on the defense, including multiple linebackers, including an edge rusher that will start, including safety, corner, like a lot of new pieces for the Eagles on both sides. No Jason Kelsey, how will that impact the line and the checks and the balances at the line, right? So the Eagles have a lot of new things. This is also in a neutral site. I would probably think the Packers would be more popular, but this is just a random thought. Jordan Love in year 2. If anything, the Packers have more chemistry than the Eagles, which would slightly make me lean towards the Packers. But the Eagles are more talented of a roster on paper. How long will it take for them to really mold and mesh, though? Right? Josh Jacobs is new to the Packers, but otherwise, they have very much the same offensive line, wide receiving core, quarterback, tight ends, play caller. They have one new offensive lineman from the draft, but that's about it. Defensively, a lot of the same pieces. Xavier McKinney enters the fold in the secondary. A couple new rookies as well. A new defensive coordinator. But again, like compared to the Eagles, not a lot that is new, especially with the head coach and the quarterback combo and that whole thing. So this could go either way. I would advise not to bet this or pick this until we have more information. I like that the Packers have more inherent chemistry and familiarity. I do think that the Eagles will struggle with the Packers' speed in their offense and their run game and their ability to attack the Eagles' undermanned linebacking position. But I would also say that the Eagles should be able to dictate on their offensive side. So if anything, I'd be looking to maybe bet an over of some type. But something in me right now wants to take the Packers. I might have even taken the Eagles when I predicted every game of the 2024 NFL season, but that's how much I'm kind of back and forth in 50-50 with this game. So, yeah, Eagles are slated as the home team, but that doesn't really matter. It's in Brazil. So, I'll lean Packers. The Pittsburgh Steelers at the Atlanta Falcons, Atlanta -3. I think I like Pittsburgh here with the points. I'm not sure they would win, but getting a field goal against a quarterback that's coming off a torn Achilles, and when you're getting the significantly better defense, the significantly better pass rush, and you're getting a revenge spot with Arthur Smith going to Atlanta, and the knowledge that he has of the personnel, the knowledge that he has of the offense, the defense, the building, like the whole foundation, that's a huge advantage all offseason, right? Going through that with Arthur Smith. Now, Russell Wilson is also experienced, so I'm not too concerned that he'll be out of shape here. Cousins is having to also learn a new offense as well as Russ. The Steelers have enough weapons to move the football on Atlanta, especially considering the new offensive line and the run game that they might offer. And defensively, they have the significantly better front seven, significantly better pass rush, and significantly more proven coach in Mike Tomlin. So I think Mike Tomlin has his team ready. I think they probably win this game, but I wouldn't be shocked if Kirk Cousins came out here and looked great and led the Falcons to a late victory. But either way, this could be a push, right? Like a 24-21 for Atlanta, and you lose, but it ends up being a push. So I would lean towards the Steelers. The New England Patriots at the Cincinnati Bengals. This is, I think, the biggest spread of the week. The Bengals are favored by 9 at home in week 1. This is quite simply like foundational advice for betting the NFL in week 1. 9 points is too many points for week 1. Considering that the Bengals, Joe Burrow has not played in a long time. He's coming off of a significant surgery, and he will have a full offseason to operate and work and get better. But that's still a huge question when you're facing one of the best defenses in the NFL in the New England Patriots. A defense that did give Burrow a tough time in their matchup a couple years ago when Burrow was healthy. And I think they made that game pretty close, if I recall. I remember a Marcus Jones pick 6 in that game. The Patriots pass rush could be, pretty impactful and a handful for the Bengals offensive line. But the one area of concern for New England is definitely their offense. That being said, what will the Bengals really know about this offense? Other than the fact that it's probably familiar, given that a lot of this is going to come from Cleveland, the offensive play caller coming from Cleveland, Jacoby played in Cleveland, right? Probably some of their run scheme will be similar to Cleveland, their play actions, things of that nature. But Cleveland has been one of those teams that has actually beaten the Bengals quite often, mostly because of their defense, but still their offense has been a part of it. So you kind of wonder how much that scheme may translate to success. I do think the Patriots could run the ball on the Bengals, which could set up some shot plays and some success for Jacoby Brissett in this opener. He's a proven quarterback. He's played a ton of NFL games. It's not like the Patriots have a ton of turnover on offense either. So they're going to have a lot of players that know, just like have played with each other and things like that. So I think this game could be closer than 9 points for sure. That's just too many points. I would definitely lean towards the Bengals, though. They have the better quarterback. They have the better offense. And ultimately, at the end of the day, they're also at home. I don't think that Burrow and the Bengals coming into this year with the chip on the shoulder that they have will lose this game, but I definitely think it could be close. The Houston Texans at the Indianapolis Colts. Texans are favored by 1.5. I would take the Texans here to cover and to win. It's a little tricky because it's a divisional game in the AFC South on the road. And the Texans are going to have a lot of hype. But I don't think this number justifies the hype and the difference between the Texans and the Colts. I think the Texans should be field goal plus favorites over the Colts, especially on a neutral. This isn't on a neutral, but you understand what I'm saying. I think the biggest factor here for me is that Anthony Richardson has barely played in his NFL career. And yeah, there's at least kind of some sort of element of surprise when it comes to Anthony Richardson and what Shane Steichen could bring to this game against DeMeco Ryans' defense. But DeMeco Ryans' defense has been built through the front seven. Fast linebackers that can flow sideline to sideline, a good pass rush, and a good front seven that can track down Anthony Richardson in the run game and can get after him in the pass game and speed up his processing. They also won't be overwhelmed by the Colts receiving core, I don't think. On the other side, the Texans could be the most potent and best offense in football. CJ Stroud was the rookie of the year and one of the best quarterbacks in football last year. The offensive line is solid enough, and that might be the biggest concern in week one, but they should be healthy at least. Joe Mixon is there, a proven NFL running back. Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell will be back, Dalton Schultz. They've got a lot of weapons to attack a very weak secondary in Indy. This is a good matchup for the Texans overall, especially considering Richardson's lack of experience. So I have to go with the Texans here. The Carolina Panthers at the New Orleans Saints. I like the Saints, although I wouldn't be shocked if the Panthers covered. So I'm going to take the 4.5. I think that the Panthers' offensive line should be a lot better. It is much more talented. They signed multiple offensive linemen, including 2 offensive guards to huge money. Robert Hunt being the marquee name, Damian Lewis out of Seattle, but Robert Hunt out of Miami got $100 million to protect Bryce Young. I do think that Dave Canales will give Bryce Young a healthy dose of the run game to help support him, as well as a lot of play action, a lot of movement of the pocket, and making life easy on Bryce Young in his early games this season. Deontay Johnson should drastically change their receiving core, along with also adding a first-round pick at the receiving core and the receiver position. This team should be a lot more explosive, a lot more fun on offense, and the Saints will have to deal with that. I also think the Saints don't have an overwhelming pass rush, but it is a difficult place to play in New Orleans in the Superdome and the noise, especially the first game of the season. The defense of the Panthers is solid overall. They don't have a lot of superstars, but the Saints' offense is also not great. I mean, if J.C. Horn is healthy, you would think that he would match up with Chris Olave. And overall, the Panthers don't have a bad matchup with this offense. So I think that this game could be pretty close. The Panthers should be improved and hungry to prove that they're better. And the Saints, they just feel very mid to me and almost not worth backing at this price early in the NFL season until I find out more about their team. The Dallas Cowboys at the Cleveland Browns. Dallas is minus 1.5. I would go with Cleveland. And I would also take Cleveland, obviously, to cover, that being the stronger pick. But the Browns' defense is tough. And although, Dallas was the better team last year, I think a majority of people would say, Cleveland's defense was unbelievable. And their pass rush could provide Dallas's new offensive line with a rookie left tackle, multiple new pieces, including probably a rookie center as well. That could be a huge issue against one of the best D-lines, one of the most loaded and deep D-lines in football. And the Browns can cover. They've got good corners led by Denzel Ward. Schwartz will come after you and has definitely had experience playing Dak, so that matters. On the other side, Cleveland has a lot of talent on offense. And the number one identity that they have, they're going to try to keep Deshaun Watson clean, probably not rely on him to win this game. And they're going to probably throw a lot of screens, run the ball a lot, get the ball to Njoku and Cooper. And the run game with Nick Chubb, who will be back for this game, is probably going to be the edge that I think the Browns have. The Cowboys' run defense is not great. They're going through a new scheme change under Zimmer, from Quinn to Zimmer, and I wonder how that will look. So Cleveland has more rapport from a coaching standpoint, a very familiar roster from last year, and overall one of the more talented rosters in football. I think they are more talented than the Cowboys. So I'll take Dallas to lose. Dak is the better quarterback here, which scares me, but I think Cleveland is the better team. The Jacksonville Jags at the Miami Dolphins. I'll take Jacksonville plus 3.5. I slightly lean towards Miami to win the game. This one's tricky. What I do like about Jacksonville is the fact that they're a Florida team playing in Miami, and usually that's like the Patriots, the Bills. They give like these East Coast cold weather teams this game early in the year, and it's just really hard to win in that game because they're not used to the weather or the humidity. But Jacksonville will be used to it, especially in Jacksonville. So that's not really going to be a huge disadvantage outside of the normal home field advantage. I think Jacksonville has the superior offensive and defensive line. I think they have the more talented quarterback, and they do have a proven winning coach. I think that Jacksonville is a little bit slept on, and Miami is a little bit overrated entering this year, especially when you consider Miami could be without both their top edge rushers for this game. Bradley Chubb, as well as Jalen Phillips, had significant injuries late in the NFL calendar last year. Tyreek Hill will be a tough cover. Obviously, Miami has a lot of weapons, and Mike McDaniel with a full offseason is really tough to bet against. But I would take Jacksonville. I think these two teams are a coin flip type of game. So I would take Jacksonville plus the points, Miami to win because they're at home. I think that they've got overall, especially with Christian Kirk coming off a significant injury, maybe they make one or two more plays with their playmakers than Jacksonville does. The Vikings at the New York Giants, Minnesota minus 2.5. This was kind of surprising when I first saw it. The Giants are obviously at home, and I don't really see either of these teams being great. I don't see either of these teams being bad, right? So 2.5 on the road, that kind of signaled to me that Vegas feels like the Vikings are, pretty significantly better than the Giants. Not overwhelmingly, but good enough to be like 2.5 near a field goal favorite over the Giants on the road. Man, fundamentals tell me to take the Giants with the points here, especially when you think back to the Giants beat the Vikings in the playoffs a couple years ago. And that coaching matchup still does somewhat exist. Some of the personnel still exists. And the Giants could take this league by storm a little bit with Malik Neighbors, an improved offensive line, Daniel Jones healthy, and some new pieces up front in the front seven. That definitely would scare me on the road if I'm the Vikings against, Sam Darnold. That's J.J. McCarthy, a rookie. If it's J.J. McCarthy, I'm certainly going with the Giants here. If it's Sam Darnold, I may be thinking twice because at least he has experience. But fundamentals tell me to take the Giants. I do think the Vikings are the better team, and I do think the one edge they truly do have, two edges. Their receiving core is significantly better than the Giants secondary, and Brian Flores' scheme and pressure system against the Giants' new offensive line and Daniel Jones could provide some problems. But fundamentals would say take the home team here. I don't know. The Denver Broncos at the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle minus 4.5. I'm going to go with Seattle to win, Seattle to cover, although that's a tricky number at 4.5. I do think they would win by 6 or 7. I think the big thing for me is that Denver with a new center, right? One that signed a nice contract with Tennessee, and a new quarterback, probably a rookie quarterback, having to play the 12th man in week 1 in Seattle. It is going to be loud. It is going to be noisy. It is going to be lit. And to play Seattle there, that's just a really tough game, especially when you are the less talented team. And Seattle has better weapons than you. Seattle is more explosive than you. And Seattle will be unveiling a new defensive scheme that Mike McDonald is going to bring it in week 1. I could see some turnovers, especially if it's the rookie playing quarterback here. So, Yeah, I like Seattle there to win and cover. The Raiders at the Chargers. Chargers favored by 3.5. I'd have to take the Raiders plus 3.5, but I will lean towards the Chargers to win the game. I think that Harbaugh will install some culture, some confidence, some swagger entering week one, and certainly some toughness. They're going to need it against this Raiders team led by Antonio Pierce, who wants to smack everybody in the face and just wreck them, right? They want to play physical, down and dirty football, black and blue football, but they will have new pieces on the offensive line. How will Brock Bowers look early in this season, and how will they utilize him? Which quarterback will the Raiders be running with? At least for the Chargers, you know it's Herbert. At least you know you've got a solid offensive line. You do have new systems on offense and defense, but you got some ballers on defense that can make a difference, like the former Raider Khalil Mack. So I like the Chargers to win. I just have more certainty about what they'll be, but the Raiders certainly will not go away, and the Chargers are not really, especially when you consider the game's in LA and it's supposed to be a Charger home game, but LA is the city of the Raiders, and never forget that. So this is not a home game for the Chargers. Let's be certain about that. And then also, the Chargers are not talented enough. I think the Raiders are pretty talented. Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, pretty good offensive line led by Colton Miller, a defense that has now Crosby and Wilkins up front. So they're not talented enough, especially receiver, tight end, skill positions, for me to lay 3 in the hook. The Tennessee Titans at the Chicago Bears. I'm going to take Tennessee plus 4.5. Absolutely. Love that. I lean Chicago, but I do think that Chicago is going to have a tough time with the Titans. I think the Titans can beat the Bears. I like how Tennessee matches up with the Bears. I think their secondary is one of the few, when you talk about Snead, Awuzie, McCreary, to be able to match up with Allen, Odunze, and more. I also think that Caleb could be a hint nervous and a little bit overzealous in his opening game, and maybe be a little bit forcey with the football and try to do too much. I think the offensive line of Chicago is definitely going to be shaky, as well as Tennessee's. Will Levis is a complete wild card, but he will go out there and sling it, and I like that in an underdog. And they do have a couple difference makers in their front seven, in Harold Landry, Jeffrey Simmons. So Chicago is at home. Chicago probably has the better overall defense. Chicago probably has more talent on offense. But I think 4.5 is way too much for an unproven quarterback, an unproven team. And Tennessee's a little bit underrated. So 4.5 is a good bet. But with the win or the loss, I lean Chicago, but I don't love it. Next up, the Washington Commanders at the Tampa Bay Bucs. Bucs are favored by 4. I like the Bucs here to win, to cover. I think that the Commanders are going to be a bit lost and a bit behind to start the season. I do think that new coach Dan Quinn will motivate them, will have them, ready to rock it in terms of attitude and motivation. But I worry about the schemes on both sides with Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn right away. I worry about the personnel. I think the offensive line is pretty bad for Washington. I think the secondary is up in the air. I don't know. The pass rush is I don't know. So there's a lot of aspects to Washington. Jaden Daniels, what is he going to be early? I know that Baker can play. I know that Tristan Wirfs is a dog. I know that the Bucs added to their offensive line and have largely the same offensive line, just maybe a bit better. I know that they have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, who's been there and done that and can move the chains. I know Rachaad White is good. I know that their defense has a lot of chemistry. Todd Bowles knows how to call a game, and he's really good against mobile quarterbacks. So I like this matchup for Tampa here, especially in week 1 against a rookie quarterback and an unproven team. The Arizona Cardinals at the Buffalo Bills. Bills -7. I like the Bills to win. I'm not certain about the cover. This could be one of those teams in the Cardinals that's ready to roll right away. I think that they don't have a lot of overwhelming talent on defense, but they'll certainly bring an intriguing game plan that I don't think a lot of teams will see coming. Last year, they did a really good job out coaching teams on that side of the ball. So I could see them kind of giving the Bills a weird, tough time early in the game that stalemates this game and makes it a little sluggish. I could also see Kyler Murray making some plays and Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride making some plays, and this could become a duel as well. So I'll go Bills to win, but I'm actually going to take the 7 points with the Cardinals. It does feel like a tough trip for the Cardinals to go west to east right away, and Josh Allen is always tough to beat. But there's something about Kyler and this setting of week 1 and anything can happen, and the Cardinals entering as an underdog, that I really feel like 7 is a lot. Sunday Night Football, the Rams at the Lions. Give me the Rams plus the 3 in the hook. I think it could be a field goal game, but give me the Lions to win. I think the game will be nearly similar or almost identical to the game in the playoffs. I think it's going to be a shootout, back and forth, ball possession. Not a game that enters 40-37 at the end of the day, but it could be like 27-24, 28-27, that type of game where back and forth, ball possession, going for it on fourth downs when needed, running the ball, throwing the ball, and both offenses are just kind of dinking, dunking, and making their plays and moving the chains on third down, and the defenses aren't really allowing big plays or trying to kind of keep them to the red zone and try to stuff them in the red zone and things like that. I think the Lions are the better team at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football. The defense is really good against the run, which I think will handle the Rams' run game. A lot of this will be on the right shoulder of Matthew Stafford, but the Lions have improved their secondary, so that should help a little bit. That being said, it's a tough matchup for a guy like Carlton Davis and the Lions secondary to play Kupp and Nakua, guys that play a lot inside the numbers. So I think that the Rams will find a way to move the ball. I think the Lions will find a way to move the ball. No Aaron Donald here, who will step up in a big moment. I think the Lions are more capable of doing that, especially at home with Eminem in attendance. And the final game, the New York Jets at the San Francisco 49ers, -5.5 for the Niners. I like the Niners. My gut, though, is saying take the Jets with 5.5. I don't really know why, but that's what my gut says. My brain sort of tells me take the Niners because they'll probably win by a touchdown, but my gut says Niners to win, Jets to cover. The Jets defense and Robert Saleh will be a tough grind for Brock Purdy and the Niners offense. This is arguably the best defense in football. It's one of them. And they have very few weaknesses. They can rush the quarterback. They've got a great secondary, got good linebackers. They've got the speed to match up with the Niners. It's going to be an intriguing game plan to see Shanahan in week 1 with all that he comes up with to play a defense that he knows very well. It could go all wrong for the Jets, though, if Aaron Rodgers is not Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he's healthy, but he's just not making all the throws. He's not moving that well. And, he's getting a little rattled with the pressure that the Niners could be bringing at this new offensive line for the Jets. So a lot of concerns here for the Jets. It's an awful schedule spot. It's an awful, awful matchup for them in week 1. It's probably the toughest game they'll play all year. They have to play it week 1 with Aaron Rodgers off an Achilles, a new offensive line intact, and really, the offense has never played together. So, and the Niners, their offense has played all last year together. They're the same unit. The defense, there's a lot of the same. So Shanahan's one of the best. So this is going to be a really tough game for them. I would take the Niners to win, but I slightly lean towards Jets to cover, but I'm not sure about that one. Those are my picks for week number 1. Very, very early here in May. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed Gronk Spike, the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more, guys. Peace.